Hello and welcome to Business Point on Global Television. We're live in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Queen Agaba. Now, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's inflation surged to 29.9% in January 2024 from 28.92% in the previous month. The January 2024 headline inflation rate showed an increase of 0.98 percent point when compared to the December 2023 headline inflation rate. Now, the free fall of the naira has affected security, housing, transportation, and food, with the dollar rates moving from 700 naira to $1 in May 2023 to 1,500 naira per dollar in February 2024. The compounding factors of inflation, unemployment, and currency devaluation have all contributed to this dire and alarming high cost of living. My guest on the program is Mr. Lugard Okonobo, who is the Director General of NIDWED Project. He will be discussing the rising cost of living in Nigeria with me. Good morning, Mr. Lugard.
Thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me clearly because I'm actually on the road.
I can hear you clearly. It's a pleasure to have you.
That's good. So we are good to go.
Yeah, so we see the rising cost of living as regards food, transport, housing, and everything. And we see that the dollar moved from 700 naira per dollar in May 2023 to an alarming rate of over 1,500 naira per dollar now in February. What are the compounding factors of this inflation? Can you hear me,
Hello?
Mr. Lugard?
Can you mute my mic?
Yes, can you hear me? I said we see that the dollar moved from
Yes.
700 naira a dollar. The naira moved from 700 naira a dollar in May, as of May 2023, to over 1,600 naira per dollar now in February. What are the compounding factors of this inflation?
Well, as you see, we are in a country where our country is very divergent. And when a new government comes in place, those who are not part of the government, they have their hidden hands in a strategic way in influencing what happens in every administration. You will recall when former President Muhammadu Buhari was in power, when he came aboard in May 2015, we saw the rising of the dollar, but not as this present situation that we have found ourselves. Insecurity has heightened in Nigeria. The rate of kidnapping has also increased. The challenges from unemployment has also increased. We have more graduates being shunned out of our tertiary institutions. And to worsen the matter, the removal of the fuel subsidy has also caused a very high rate of the cost of living. Virtually everyone needs power to survive. Be it that you need the fuel to fuel your generator, whether at home or in the offices, whether you need it for car or you need it in the marketplace for grinding, petroleum product is needed across board. And once that essential commodity is affected, then the possibility of affecting every sector is there. And that's what we have seen at the moment. It's a very pathetic situation. Just yesterday, I was talking to someone. She is a person with disability. And I was asking, I said, if complete human beings like us are complaining of the economic hardship, I wonder what persons with disability will be complaining about. Because if you look at Nigeria as it is, we really don't have a social security system that works. We saw what happened with the Better Gate. an institution and a ministry of government that is supposed to address the deficiency and the challenges affecting persons that are deprived, if you allow me to use that word, those that are socially excluded from the Nigerian society. And we saw all the manipulations and the high-level scam that happened in that ministry. Back to having those in government. Someone have said that every policy that comes aboard favors some and it doesn't favor some other persons. And what one will always expect is that those who did not benefit or who are not privileged to benefit from the system or the policy of a new government, they have a systemic and strategic way of fighting the government to a standstill. And I see that already playing out. This is the first time in the history of Nigeria that will have BDCs, operators being attacked by the EFCC. This is the first time we'll see a government in power remove subsidy with utmost boldness, if permit me to use that word. I'm not against the removal of subsidy, but what I've always said is that you need dialogue, you need to even understand a system. It's one thing to complain about a system when you're outside, and it's another thing for you to be in the system to really understand the in-depth of what is actually happening. And that is why you see when someone is in position of authority, if there's any allegation against him and government will always say such a person needs to step out of the office, because when he's out of the office, a lot of information and a lot will definitely open up. And I see that already at play, because Mr. President, on assumption of office, there are certain nitty-gritty things that needs to be done. Understudy the system before taking drastic action. I just pray and hope that we're not going to have a situation where he will begin to recede on certain decisions that he has made. Because, as I said earlier, those who did not benefit or who felt that the policy on grant will not favor them, they definitely have a way of fighting the system to a standstill. We've seen government, we've seen former president who says that their hands are tied. And you now ask, if the president is also the commander-in-chief, who are these people that are tying the hands of Mr. President? It goes to tell you that we have some external hands that are control and more very powerful than the Nigerian state and even those who are the leaders of our dear country, Nigeria. It also tells that we have those within the system who are being used to distort the independence that the Nigerian state is supposed to enjoy. We pray that this will not degenerate, as we can see right now. Hunger everywhere in the land. And the reprisal effects, my sister, it will only be God that will deliver us from the aftermath effect of what will happen. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Lugard, just to tilt a bit as regards the BDC's operators in Nigeria, we see that the EFCC raided them sometime last week, and a whole lot around BDC's operators in Nigeria. Are there any recommendations or change you believe should be made to improve the oversight of the road exchange operations in Nigeria?
Well, the only thing I know that is constant is change. The BDC operators, they've always been operating under trees, according to my friends. And someone will say, no matter the millions of dollars you bring, they have the wherewithal to be able to change it. And that means, in a sane society, some of these things will definitely not happen. Every system needs regulation. Every system needs monitoring and evaluation. And when the system is being eroded, I don't think it will be out of play for the regulators to set in machineries in motion to address the adverse effects of the over 200 million Nigeria. And I want to ask, the question you and myself will begin to ask, how many persons are these Bureau de Change, the BTC operators? Few human beings that control the destinies of over 200 million Nigerians. The Central Bank of Nigeria have come up with a policy, will I call it a reviewed policy on the operators of BDC. I just have a scan through yesterday. I've not read it in depth, so I may not be in full position to be able to explain in detail. But I want to say that the central bank that licenses a Bureau de Change, they are in best position to do the needful so as to save our economy. It's very important at this point in time that our economy is saved, because the determinant of the prices of dollar, one will always ask, what are the factors considered? You wake up tomorrow, a dollar is 1.5. You wake up the next day, it's 1,300 naira. You just, according to my friend, I don't know you, I am sure that we all saw that video in circulation of that malam that went to see someone that wanted to change dollar. Every calls he received at that particular time was for an increase in the cost of dollar. The question you ask, what are the rationale? What are the market forces? What are the dynamics behind the rapid increment in the cost or in the change, in the variation in the prices of dollar to the naira? We need to understand this matrix so as to salvage the economic situations, the hardship that Nigerians have underwent. Even the woman in the market selling fufu, or we like call crayfish, the first thing he will tell you today is that the dollar has increased in the market. Even my grandmother in the village that have not seen dollar, that does not even know how a dollar looks like, has now ascribed the high cost of living to the increase in the cost of dollar. And I also think at this point in time, government needs to begin to look inward. I remember the other time when the former governor of Central Bank came up with a policy of a Nigerian exchange naira against the Chinese, I think also Japanese yen, if I may remember, that we need to have different exchange rates. I didn't really know what happened to that policy. But I think at this point in time, the Nigerian states and the regulators of our financial system needs to begin to look in depth so that we don't continually remain hooked and tied to the dollar variation like what we have seen today. A lot of companies are dropping their staffs because they can no longer import. I have a friend that traveled out of the country. As we speak right now, he can't fly back because of the high cost of flight. I have someone that imported vehicle. He too cannot even clear the vehicle. He told me that the cost of clearing is even almost outweighing the cost he bought the vehicle from Europe. Is that pathetic? Everything is being affected left, right, front, back, and corner. The earlier, the better we begin to address. And I think the CBN should come to the rescue of Nigerians. And above all, the government of the day needs to look inward. I say inward because we've had good policies. We have the National Economic Development Strategy needs. We have the State Economic Empowerment Development Strategy. We have the Local Economic Empowerment Development Strategy. I think at some point in time, one needs to go back and redust this document. We need to check this document. How do we integrate the local government into the state and the state into the national structure, so that states that have comparative advantage can focus on what they have? And that way, Nigeria will not be greater in terms of exports. Well, some of us will say when you export in such a time, you make money in dollars. But the question I will ask, how many persons have the capacity to even do exports? Do we have the machineries? Do we have the power infrastructure? Do we have the road infrastructure? How is our taxation system? By the time you couple all these things together, you find out that we are not even competitive in the international markets. So time has come. Maybe my mother will always say, there are some lessons you learned, good lessons from hardship. My prayer and hope is that this hardship that we are in should open our eyes from local to state and to national. But unfortunately, we have a political system that does not even care about the masses, where we have senators, legislators still buying imported vehicles for running into almost over 150 million. December, 200 million naira was given to his senators. 120 million naira to House of Rep. How many of them actually shared it? Mr. President gave 5 billion naira. This is the best time that we should begin to ask our state governors, what are they doing with our monies? What are they doing with our resources? We should look inward. And I think with all the natural resources we have, Nigeria is in a better position to even make more dollar, more return on investment on the dollar. But how prepared are we is a question that we keep having an answer that I cannot be able to say when that answer will come. Government come, government go. We keep saying we are going to explore different resources, from the reform agenda of President Obasanjo to the 7-point agenda, to the transformation agenda, to the change agenda, next level agenda. Now we are in the renewed hope. Will our hope be renewed? Well, that's a question I will leave for you to answer for me and for Nigerians. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Luga, just quickly, with all of the reforms that we see happening and, you know, all of the measures that are put in place, like we see the customs giving out bags of rice at discounted prices, and we hear that some of it are free. Do you think that these are measures that can mitigate, accurately mitigate the adverse effect of inflation on Nigerians? How far do you see that these measures would take us? And looking at Nigeria and looking at the inflation rate, do you think that this will come to a halt anytime soon?
I will say, yeah, without missing words, such systems are not sustainable anywhere. What keeps the hand and the mind busy is what government should be looking at. I'm not here to campaign for any politician, but I will say we have it on the social media, so it's something that anybody can look at for. We saw a governor in the east, in the southeast, commissioning rabbit, will I call it a rabbit factory? And we also saw a governor in the north central commissioning tractors, 300 tractors for that, with a promise to even scale it up to 1,000 tractors. That is the best way to go. That governor recognized that his state has the largest land mass in Nigeria today. He wants to capitalize on the agricultural value chain because his state does not have crude oil like that state that has crude oil, where the governor was sharing rabbit cages as an empowerment tool for Nigerian youth. Rabbit is part of agriculture, but the approach and the strategy is questionable. So time has come for our state governors to begin to look inward. I want to give you 1,000 tractors. Do you know the mechanization capacity that will come out of that? The labor reduction, the stress for the average farmers. That is a governor that is thinking into the future. He wants to ensure that every plot of land in his state is maximally utilized for agricultural production. And I want to say here, I don't have access to him. I'm not campaigning for him. But I can tell you, he's a man who is already prepared. And I've always said it at fora where I've had opportunity to speak. Government should just be focused. If that state focus on agriculture alone, my sister, they will be net exporter of whatever produce that they produce from that state. Why? Because when you increase your production, the next you begin to look at is how do you preserve? And from my findings, I've seen that this governor has checked that his state can generate power, and he can use that power to provide electricity for preservation and processing. That means that state can be relied on for the 5 agricultural value chain, and that is the way to go. He may not construct roads, but I want to tell you that the tax incentive on the expansion of agribusiness in that state would definitely generate income to fix the roads. That is the best way to go. Sharing palliative will never solve any issue. You give a man 1 bag of rice. I want to ask you, will he not eat gari? Will he not eat semo? Will he not eat meat? What about other things? That is not sustainable. The more we share, we already see a situation where some of those commodities are diverted. We see situations where
Okay, I believe we have a challenge from Mr. Lugart's end, network challenge. Mr. Lugart, can you hear me? Okay, very salient point he was making there as regards the cost of food items and how unsustainable, you know, these palliatives and the movement of palliative is for Nigerians as regards fuel, petrol, gas, and other things. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Please stay with us. Many thanks, Mr. Lugard, and many thanks to you for still keeping it up with us on Business Point. Before the break, we had Mr. Lugard with us talking about the rising cost of living in Nigeria and what the government can do and what ways they can look into cushioning the effect of inflation in Nigeria. Now let's take a quick look at the business desk, and when we return, we'll take another angle from a pharmaceutical expert who is also experiencing the challenges of the rising cost of living in Nigeria. Now on the business desk, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has introduced a fresh set of guidelines to keep Bureau de Change, BDCs, in check. Under the new guidelines, BDCs in the Tier 1 category must have a capital requirement of 2 billion naira, while Tier 2 BDCs must have a capital requirement of 500 million naira. Tier 1 BDCs formerly were expected to cough out 15 million naira to acquire the license. This represents a 13,233.33% license fee hike. The CBN was forced to come up with a new set of guidelines in order to address the ongoing foreign exchange crisis in the country. Now, the chairman of Northern Elders Forum, Ango Abdullahi, has endorsed the proposed amendment of Nigerian Constitution to revert to the parliamentary system of government. Abdullahi gave the endorsement while hosting members of the House of Representatives Parliamentary System Caucus. Global Television had reported the introduction of the Constitutional Alteration Bill seeking to amend the Constitution to abolish the presidential system and reintroduce parliamentary system of government in the country. A group of 60 members of the House are pushing the legislation in the National Assembly, and they've been moving around the country to solicit support for the bill. Nigeria practiced the parliamentary system in the First Republic. Now, joining me to discuss the rising cost of living from the end of the pharmaceuticals is a pharmaceutical expert, Joseph Tay, who will join me just after this short break. Please keep it up with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, if you've just joined us, this is Business Point, and we're live in the nation's capital, Abuja. And before the break, we had Mr. Lugard, who is still online with us, talking about the rising cost of living. And now we're also joined by Mr. Joseph Tay, who is a pharmaceutical expert. How is it like? We see the rising cost of, of the dollar daily. We see the inflation rate. How has it affected you in the pharmaceuticals sector?
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Can you hear me, Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I can hear you. I don't know if you are hearing me from your end.
I can hear you clearly. Please go on.
Okay. Oh, thank you for having me. First of all, Nigeria, which is an economy that is solely depending on the dollar for importing on most of its pharmaceutical products or its active ingredients for production. has its fair share of this upsurge of the dollar to naira exchange issue that we're dealing with now. Unlike in the pharmaceutical sector and in the business, what we're now looking at is no longer just expecting a timing bomb, but the bomb has already exploded. First of all, the cost of bringing in the medication is so high and it's near impossible to even put in your money in the business now or to even see the dollar to exchange for it. Let me not talk much about the dollar because I'm not a dollar expert, but let me tell you about what I know and I do every day. So, as we look at it now, if you notice the price of medication in the last few months has increased dramatically. Do you notice something like that?
No,
So,
that.
sorry? No, that, say, okay, now, let's say that a medication that you were buying 100 naira as of between 5 to 6 months previously is today increased to 200 naira or even 210 naira. Now look at it. Or for someone that is earning a particular amount of minimum wage that is being fixed for some number of months or if not years or a decade, now I believe it's being pegged at 30,000 naira or so to be buying a medication, let's say a premium brand, a life-saving medication. Let's look at things like antihypertensive or anti-diabetic medication. The prices of such brands that are of trusted and some Nigerians are familiar with has gone up significantly, some over 100% increase. So the crisis is already there, not that it's being expected, is there. If someone has not felt it, that means it has not been to that person's doorstep yet, but it's certainly there and is likely to get to everybody. Provided you are alive and you are living in this country and you need something to do with your health. Let's say the government may tell us that the cost of healthcare has not increased, but the cost of medication has increased.
The name on the package.
Okay, now, now coming from I'm sure because you work in the healthcare sector and knowing that the prices have increased in terms of medications, how often do you get people coming, obviously people coming and complain? How is this like for you?
Well, this is a daily complaint. And as you can see, customers are no longer complaining. Users of these medications are no longer complaining. Most of them are looking for alternatives, some herbal, some in any other ways that they can take care of their health. So, or if you notice, the business has gone down. With time, if care is not taken, most business people will be out of business. Some will have a huge chunk of expiry in their own inventory because what people that used to buy this medication are no longer coming. And even when they come, the price of the medication is unfriendly. So what happened? If someone is not able to afford even 3 square meal and you are expecting the person to take a particular medication to stay alive, what is the essence of staying alive or buying a medication to stay alive when you can eat food first? And then the major challenge that is even going to be there now is most companies can't bring in these medications because
The high cost
the
of
cost,
imports.
the high cost can't even allow them. So if you ask all the pharmaceutical companies in the country, majority of them are having issues of out of stock or difficulties bringing in the out of stock medication to replenish their warehouses. So there's a crisis already, and the crisis is not having any end in sight. As we look at it now, it's not looking that bright at all, but we keep hope.
So now, in what ways can the government come in to mitigate the effect in the pharmaceutical company?
Well, I think government has a long way to go in trying to mitigate these issues in the pharmaceutical industry as we look at it now. Most businesses are likely going to need bailout to be able to function in this economy. Most businesses will need bailouts. And then the effect of pharmaceutical industry in this country is very, 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 very huge, and its importance is greatly or something that government needs to take care of to make sure that the industry continue to thrive. Let's say that government making the dollar that they import of this medication depends on available to those that truly needs it. If the companies that truly needs this dollar to bring in the life-saving medication into the country cannot even have access to the said dollar, then there's a challenge. I think healthcare industry should be given a very, very important focus. Let's say that there should be a particular budget for the pharmaceutical industry or the healthcare industry as a whole now in this country. Well, when I look at the last budget for the healthcare industry, I think it was like something 1,500 naira per every Nigerian. Let me take you back to the patients that are benefiting from their HMOs. Most of the HMOs can't even send this medication to their patients again. You know why? They are expensive. So if government provide a means to cushion the way pharmaceuticals industry can bring in their product, they can access this dollar at a good rate so that they will be able to manage their own earning, balance their own profit, and also being considerate to the Nigerian people. That will help. But without the intervention, and then the terms of doing business, the tariffs, the duties, all this, if government have a critical look at them and grant a waiver on some of these things, I think it will be easier for the companies to try better, thereby the soaring cost of drug might be reduced. It depends on the government, and I believe government can do it.
We hope that the government will look into these sectors. Many thanks, Mr. Joseph Tay. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lugard, we'll go to Mr. Lugard now. Do we have Mr. Lugard on the line? Okay, so we'll take a quick break and hopefully reconnect with Mr. Lugard for the final laps of this conversation. Please keep it locked with us. We're now connected with Mr. Lugard Okonobo, the Director General Nigerian Project. Mr. Lugard, before I went to Mr. Tay, Joseph, you know, you highlighted a number of things and a number of factors that needs to be considered as regards the rising cost of inflation and the foreseeable future. Now, we don't pray for the worst, but it almost seems like there's going to be a breakdown of law and anarchy if nothing is done about it. We see just last week where hoodlums in some parts of the country were stopping trailers carrying foods. Obviously, these are food items, or these are companies owned by private individuals. You know, how does this affect the businessman in Nigeria? Is Mr. Lugard on the line? Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm here.
Lugard? Can you hear me, Mr. Lugard? Oh, we have a bit of a network challenge. So we see last week where there was a truck that had food items, conveying food items, obviously farm produce, agricultural produce, to other parts of the country, being transported on roads. And in some parts, I think that should be in Niger State, if I'm not mistaken. We see a video where hoodlums were captured, you know, stopping these vehicles. There's almost going to be something like a mob action, most likely a mob action to the drivers and the passenger in that truck carrying loads and loads of food items. Now, we understand the implications of this for most business owners, because this obviously, some of the trucks are being owned by private individuals. Now we see how it hits virtually every part, everyone in the country, from insecurity to the high cost of living, corruption, and a whole lot. And now we see that the projects by the federal government, which is welcome, but the questions we're asking and we're posing now is how sustainable are these palliative moves we see in Lagos, especially where bags of rice by the Nigerian Customs Service is being dished out to people. We hear initially that it was for a fee, a meager fee of 10,000, but at some point it was given out for free. Now, how sustainable? Some of the questions we begin to ask and pose is, how sustainable are these initiatives, are these palliative movements, you know, for the Nigerian man, for an average Nigerian man, or for the very vulnerable and the poor? You give them a bag of rice today, what happens tomorrow? Do they have oil? Do they have gas? Can they cook? Can they do all of this? And then the problem now we ask is, money is not, making money in Nigeria is not just the challenge, but how sustainable is the economy for Nigerians? How? Because the Naira has lost its value, obviously. You have this amount of money. We've had on the program quite a number of people, economists and financial analysts, come to tell us that if you have #1 million Naira in your bank account, with the exchange rate and the inflation rate in Nigeria, it's approximately 700,000 or even 500,000. That is to show how devalued the Naira has become. Now, the question we are posing, how sustainable are these programs? What can be done? What is the way forward for Nigerians? These are our questions. I believe we're now reconnected with Mr. Lugard. Mr. Lugard, are we with you? Can you hear me? We still have a bit of network challenge. Sadly, this is where we would draw the curtains on the program, leaving these questions and hoping and beckoning on the government to look into the plight of Nigerians. Quite frankly, a number of things are put in place, a number of initiatives are put in place, but the questions we're asking now is the environment sustainable? Is the Naira valuable? Can we make money in the country and spend and be fulfilled? Is Nigeria secure for business owners to thrive? Can my business bloom in this economy? Am I safe? Do I have insurance? Am I assured of a tomorrow a better tomorrow in Nigeria, because we've seen we've seen initiatives of hopes time and time and time again. We've been assured that things will get better. But on the other hand, we see how worse it becomes, how damning the economy becomes. We hope and pray for a better Nigeria. And on business points, this is where we draw the curtains. Thank you for your time, and see you again tomorrow. We'll be discussing another interesting topic as regards world's economy and Nigeria. I'm Queen Agaba. Thank you for watching, and see you again.